recall us to order and declare that we still have a quorum of 7 members present. Item C, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to a management oversight workshop for the CSISD Purchasing Department. Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, members of the board. As you are all very aware, Board Policy BAA Local directs us as a team of 8 to look at major business systems that the school district oversees on an annual basis to look at metrics, but on a every 3-year basis to do a deep dive into these particular areas. We call them management oversight workshops. The one that is up for us this month or this year, this part of this year, in October, is the purchasing department. And so we're going to spend probably an hour and a half, 2 hours together looking into great detail about how we go through purchasing in College Station ISD, the things that we do to make sure that our purchasing system has great integrity, how we measure ourselves to make sure we're bringing the best value to the taxpayers of College Station ISD. And so excited to have Mark Pantel, our Director of Purchasing here, to take us through this presentation. He'll get started here in just a second. We've got a few stop points in between to ask questions, but at any point, this is a back and forth, free-flowing conversation. If at any point you have a question, I would encourage you just to go ahead and stop and ask that so we can hear those questions at that time. Do want to say about Mr. Pantel, he's been a tremendous leader for us in College Station ISD for how many years, Mark?
18 years.
18 years. He's been here, and Mr. Pantel announced a few weeks ago that he would be moving on and retiring here by the end of the calendar year. I just want to say, for the record, for the public and for the school board, we've been served very well by having Mark Pantel as our Director of Purchasing. Losing him and his leadership in our purchasing and warehouse department is going to be a great loss for us. I appreciate Mark and how he does everything he can do to keep us, make sure we're going down the right paths, ask those difficult questions, and make sure that we do right by the citizens of College Station ISD. And he's been a great friend and a great leader for this school district, and he will be sorely missed. But he's not out of the door yet. He's got about 90 minutes worth of information to share with us before he exits, so we're excited about hearing more about purchasing and warehouse. With that, Mr. Pantel.
Mr. Harris, Dr. Ely, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to present the Management Oversight Report for Purchasing. We're going to go over introduction, system description, system integrity, and the system metrics of the 4 categories. The CRSS definition, I think most of y'all have seen that. We are BA policy, we're on purchasing. As you well know, the board needs to know, are students, employees, and others safe? Are the district's assets secure? Are the laws and policies followed? Does fairness prevail? Are major business systems effective and efficient? I want to start off with the system description. Picture of our new purchasing warehouse facility opened in May of 2016. So what we're going to go over under system description is our purpose, the board policies that govern purchasing, organization, number, and type of employees, our responsibilities, budget, cost, and trends, vehicle fleet, purchasing and warehouse trends, office and warehouse space, coverage and scheduling, volume and workload trends, and 5-year staffing and equipment plan. So our mission statement and purpose on our website is our goal to provide responsive and competent purchasing and warehouse services while upholding the highest degree of professionalism, commitment, and integrity. So there's really 5 board policies that govern purchasing, the primary one being CH, which is the bid thresholds and the meat of procurement. CHE involves vendor relations, which includes the conflict of interest requirements, the board disclosure forms that y'all fill out. And then we have a CI policy that has to do with disposal of school property, CMD having to do with equipment and supplies management, and that's primarily textbooks and instructional materials, and then records management is CPC. So just a little overview of our department. I am the Director of Purchasing. I've been here since 2001. I have two purchasing specialists, Julie Holliday and Jennifer Harrell, and a part-time receptionist, Beth French. We have 4 employees in the warehouse department, Robert Taylor, who's been with me since the beginning, and I think 33 years now. Jennifer Byrode, warehouse courier, Sam Baroni, our newest warehouse courier, and Jarius San Angelo, warehouse courier. So there's the organizational chart. The warehouse couriers report to Robert, and then the other employees report directly to me. So we have some experienced people in the purchasing department, 106 years of total staff experience, and the average is actually 13. So it's a lot of years working for CSISD specifically.
So that's going to take a major crash next time we get this presentation.
That will take a little bit of a crash in 3 years from now, if that's the schedule. Just a little update. We did add a half-time, part-time receptionist in the fall of 2014, and a much-needed warehouse courier in the summer of 2016. It's made a tremendous difference in our ability to keep up with the volume and the growth in the district. In that time, we've added 4 new campuses, a couple of them pretty close together, so that's helped some. So basically, we have 7 major areas of responsibility: purchasing, warehouse and central receiving, instructional materials or textbooks, surplus property, records retention, recycling, and food storage. So we're going to talk about each one of those a little bit. So under purchasing, obviously, we establish annual bids for commodities. I think I looked today, and we have 20 annual bids set up that are 2-year agreements with 3-year renewals, and that's for people to use when they're purchasing items. So those are called annual bids. We also solicit quotes for aggregate purchases of $10,000 or more. That was recently increased due to some legislation at the federal level that allowed us to increase that from $3,500 to $10,000. So we adjusted our local guidelines accordingly. We also solicit formal bids for purchases over $50,000. Y'all see those on the board agenda. And we approve all purchase orders over $500 in the purchasing department. We also coordinate participation with 18 purchasing co-ops and state contracts, which we lean on pretty heavy. The warehouse and central receiving is really, we receive all the freight for the district, with a few exceptions. A few local vendors, I think, still deliver to the campuses. We purchase and stock and distribute commonly used items. I'll give you some more details on that in a minute. We deliver all the U.S. mail and the interoffice mail. We pick up commodities from the cafeterias each afternoon. And we deliver and pick up and assemble and relocate furniture. That's a picture of our new central receiving warehouse. Really happy the way that turned out. We've got a lift so we can go down to the level of a cargo van, and we also have a couple other docks that for big trucks. So it's worked out pretty well for us so far. Number 3 is instructional materials. We are responsible for ordering, distributing, collecting, disposing of instructional materials. We also keep an inventory of all those materials, and we process instructional material allotment requests. And I'll talk about the allotment funding here in a minute, but we process the requests and get those POs entered once they're approved.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, so you do the ordering of the instruction materials. How is it communicated to you all about what to order?
That we work with the curriculum department.
Okay.
Penny Trammell, Dr. Trammell and her group. And we work like at this upcoming adoption, there'll be a lot of interaction with them on what's been selected and how many to order and how many to send to each school. So it's a pretty rigorous process. But we don't participate in the selection. We just work with what is selected and order those accordingly.
Okay.
And with IMA, it's become more complicated with different bundles of things. with more choices have become a little more complicated to make sure you get everything right. There's just a lot more offerings out there than there used to be before the IMA came along. So it's a good thing, but we have to be careful that we're ordering the right materials and the right bundles of kits and things. So.
I got a question on number one, you said y'all do the purchases of stuff more than $500. What's the process of somebody that needs stuff for $400?
Those are all processed by our business office. They take care of the purchase orders and the credit card purchases under $500. So I keep a track of those, but I don't physically sign those or approve those. Those are handled by Diana Kelly and Carmela Schaefer. So I think we're on number 4, surplus property. We collect, store, redistribute, sell, and dispose of surplus property. We also, as of a couple of years ago, began donating hardware to STS Recycling in Jacksonville. The previous to that, we had donated computers to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. They got to a point where they weren't wanting to accept a lot of the stuff like TVs and stuff. So worked with David Hutchison on this, and we're donating these to this company. It's really not enough volume to garner any real cash back from it. So that's a little change that we implemented a couple of years ago. We feel like they do a more thorough job too of erasing hard drives, and we looked at their process. So quite a few districts are using them now to do that. That's just a picture of what on an organized day, that's what our surplus area looks like. It doesn't look like that right now because we got a lot of surplus in this summer from when the staff came back. So we're fixing to have another auction here shortly. Records retention, I am the acting records manager for the district, designated. Each October, we collect about 400 or 500 boxes of records. And December, we pay a company, RCI, to come in and look through those and make sure we've got them all right. And they put them into a program and schedule for destruction based on their retention date. We also do some digital imaging. We did A&M Consolidated 5 or 6 years ago now. We had them digitize all the student records. Chrissy Hester spearheaded that program. And we also do training for bring in RCI, or sometimes I do training on records handling. There has been some recent changes in records retention for school districts. Some shorter, some longer. So we've had to kind of adjust to that. That new legislation came out in May. Picture of our new records room. It is more full than that now. Some of these pictures are when we opened up. Recycling, we do process the invoices for pickup and recycling. I looked this morning and I believe we've got 12 campuses that are recycling. Some are not. Some are doing some stuff on their own, but I'm in charge of kind of overseeing that. We have not really changed our recycling program and since I've been here. I do purchase and get quotes for the new campuses. Welborn Middle School ordered carts and bins. So it's all there for them if they want to do it. Primarily paper recycling, some aluminum cans. So that's something that could be enhanced. We've looked at a few options over the years, but that's kind of where we're at right now on recycling. With the new warehouse, we did incorporate a freezer and a cooler and a dry goods storage. This is not all the food that child nutrition uses, but it's kind of overflow stuff. I call it free food, but it's food from the programs that we receive, free food. And we deliver that every Tuesday morning to the campuses. And in the end of the school year, we actually go around and collect all the food from the freezers and coolers and store that during the summer, the stuff that can be kept over the summer. So we greatly enlarged our space that we had over here, so it's been nice. So our operating budget is $53,001. That's non-personnel cost. We also receive IMA funds from TEA for textbooks. So this is just a graph here of our budget, which hasn't increased a whole lot in the last 3 years, but we're making it work. This is just a little graph of the material allotment funding. The first one is the 14-15 allotment. When IMA first came out, they gave us money in 2-year increments. I'm sorry, in 1-year increments, which is what that number down there, 917,825, was the second part of that allotment. Starting with 15-16, they gave us money for the 2 years. So that's why you have 2,592,452. So, and then you got the 2.4 for the next allotment. So that's the funding that we get for
And those
IMA.
subjects are the adoptions that are going
Correct.
through at that time.
Right, and we are coming up on the ELA adoption, which, yes, will be. So we actually have an inventory of $5,303,785 worth of textbooks, and that also includes the definition of instructional materials has been expanded beyond textbooks. We've got, a lot of some technology in there and some software, but we inventory that and keep track of it through a software program, and we go around and audit all the campuses, but we only do on-sites to maybe half. We pick the middle schools and intermediates 1 year, and then we do elementaries, and we do the high schools every year. We physically go around and locate every item and make adjustments as needed. Starting with IMA, the textbooks, instructional materials became property of the school district. Before that, they were owned by the state. The only exception is large print and braille is still the property of the state. So when we're done with those, we send them back to the STRC in San Antonio. So just looking at our vehicle fleet, we just received a new Ford cargo van, much needed. We actually have made a lot of progress in getting our fleet updated, and I'm very thankful for the support from the administration for that. I think we're in a real good place on our vehicle fleet and it's the condition. We are averaging about 5 years. The 2000 box truck is bringing things down, or I guess raising it up as far as average age, but we're pretty good shape. We put a lot of miles on these vehicles, so age is not a real good indicator of the condition of the vehicle. The things that wear out are the doors and things that you open up, and so that's what tends to wear out before anything is the doors and the hinges on the. So Randy over here does a lot of welding sometimes just to fix a door hinge, and the transmission, everything's fine. We try to replace about every 5 or 6 years, or we've done it more often than that recently with some funding that I've received. As far as our new facility, we did open in May of 2016, located at 9304 Rock Prairie Road next to the bus barn out there. We have 28,241 square feet. You can see the breakdown there of offices and the warehouse. Picture of our warehouse. We built this thing, I believe, the last 30 years, so we've got some extra space. That is actually an old picture. It's amazing what how we've been able to utilize the spacing, and we put stuff that we're not using and can stick it up high, and it's out of the way. We have no real closets in this building. They didn't want rooms where you stick stuff and forget about them. So there's some rooms for textbooks and records, but they have very specific uses, and they go in and they come out. So we don't have any long-term storage is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, we had over here. We had a little problem with that. So it's well lit, and you can see in there real good. This is just a little graph of our staffing and the correlation to the growth in the district. We've added an employee and a half since 15-16, or one employee, excuse me, the Courier. So looking at the hours worked, you can see that in 15-16. We put in like 4,000 hours of straight time. When we got the additional Courier, that jumped up to 6,000. The overtime kind of stayed where it was at, actually went down a little bit the first year. And then the next year was very consistent with 6,000 hours, not a little less overtime. The 843 part-time is a result of one of our employees retired, and he's been able to come back Robert Ford and work part-time as needed. So that's primarily his hours. That's been a big benefit to have him be able to come back and fill in. We were using bus drivers to help us with that. And we still have one available if we need it, but that's been a big benefit for us. So some other trends with bids. This just kind of shows our formal bid activity. Basically, it's broken out by request for bids, request for proposals, request for competitive seal proposals, and request for quotes. Request for bids are just straight line item bids. RFP is a little looser and is a proposal, not a bid, so you may not be looking at the same exact reply as you would a bid. And then a seal proposal is more geared toward construction and renovation and is very similar to an RFP, but is geared toward construction and a contractor doing work on site. RFQ is really a formal RFQ. We utilize some of the co-ops have a way to go in and put in items and get quotes through the buy board is one of them, and that's what those were. We did that for Wilburn Middle School, Contrail band instruments. It's a way to get bids without advertising and still meet the competitive bid requirements and stay within that umbrella of the co-op. So looking at just the residency, those are the numbers. We get a pretty good local participation, quite a few Texas vendors, and then out of state. It's pretty evenly distributed depending on what the project is, what the bid is. So diving a little deeper in the purchase orders, Mr. Schaefer was asking, we actually processed 2,663 purchase orders over $500 that came across my desk, and that added up to about 16,829,576. So you can see the breakdown. 6 million of that was non-construction bond POs, furniture, all the stuff that we buy for new campuses that John Hall doesn't do. So you can see it's a pretty big piece of the pie there. And we have about 2,895 vendors that we have access to that are approved. So there's a little pie chart of breakdown of type of funds that we use. And we're at the percentages there. A good portion, I think about 40% is local funds. IMA funds is 76 out of that. Federal bond construction, non-construction bonds, activity funds, Ed Foundation, community ed, and warehouse purchasing. So a good portion of our spending is local. The federal funds are there, and of course there's some new legislation on that we've encountered. And this is another pie chart about just regarding the type of method used to procure it. As you can see, almost half, I guess that's about 40%, is purchasing co-ops. So we do lean heavily on the 18 purchasing co-ops. Y'all see those on the board agenda. We do have, we do issue RFPs, RFBs. We use the DIR, which is the Department of Information Resource state contract. There is some sole source purchases, 166 out of 2,000, 2,600. ILAs or interlocal agreements with the region service centers, Texas A&M. And then there are some that come across that don't have a bid reference, and those are normally things like registrations that go over $500 that we don't really require them to put a note in there. So, and then about 90 of those are quotes that we get, just getting quotes. A lot of the small stuff under 500 would be done through a quote process. Any questions on any of that before I go into warehouse work orders? So we average about 730 work orders per year, and that includes transporting, delivering, relocating furniture, technology, food, instructional materials. We pick up surplus property, really hits us heavy in August, July and August. And then we also do the other things like graduation, stuff the bus, 50 men, choir and band concerts and Sally. Some of those things require us to wait till after hours and move band instruments over to, or a lot of times it's orchestra, to a campus, and then we move them back that night at 10 o'clock. So that's where we get in a little bit of overtime that we incur that we can't do during our normal business hours. So we have 15 different freight carriers that we kind of see on a regular basis that come in every day. And we're currently tracking about 80 parcels a day that come in. We have 2 routes set up as a north route and a south route. And then the third route is kind of the other category. The third courier kind of takes out things that need to be delivered. The regular morning route is really work orders and warehouse stock, mail delivery, surplus property. And the afternoon is parcels and the cafeteria pickup. And on Tuesday morning, we actually come in 6:30 and do the food deliveries. We actually are putting in about 170 miles a day with 3 couriers, 17 hours on the road. It's a lot of stops and pickups. That's when all 3 couriers are going. There are days when that third courier is kept back and is doing stuff in the warehouse if there's not a need for deliveries. But that's an average. So the courier, 2 of my couriers are making 36 stops a day, twice at each campus. A lot of miles. This gives you an idea of kind of how the mileage has grown in the route. We moved out to our new building. It did add a few miles to our overall route, but I think we've adapted to that, and it's slowly grown. Pecan Trail and Weldon Middle School are pretty close together, so it's not a big mileage difference, but it does impact our hours that we spend there. But anyway, you can see the asterisk there. We added the third courier, and then the mileage did jump up a little bit. So as far as our warehouse inventory, we currently have 190 items in inventory. This includes paper, office supplies, cleaning supplies, file cabinets, batteries, utensils, light bulbs. One of the things that we were able to do when we moved to the new building was add some new items and really expand our existing line. So we had, carried this blue pen, we were able to add red and green. And so we did a lot of that was expansion of our current line. So we've actually added 60 new items, and our sales have gone up 45% since we opened up our new building. Inventory as of September 14th was $86,650, and our total sales for the 2017-18 year were $951,908. We do not charge a markup for when I say sales. It's a direct bill to the campus and the department. So,
Mr. Patel, do you monitor these supplies that go out from each of the schools, like that you see that maybe a school is using an exorbitant amount of something, or light bulbs would indicate maybe there's another electrical problem? Is that something that you monitor?
right. When we do our inventory twice a year, we run a report in e-finance, and we can see who's buying what, and if somebody's using more of another item, or we think we need to get some new products in.
Do you question that at all, or do you just how does that work? If once you see something that was out of the ordinary, say, would you be able to address that through or would you take that somewhere else?
We don't have a mandatory warehouse use policy, so it's really up to them if they want to utilize our services. That issue was discussed when we opened the new building, and so if I see somebody, what I do is sign purchase orders where I see that we have warehouse stock items on there, and we automatically contact the department and say, do you know that you're ordering warehouse stock items from a vendor that we carry, and we give them the price difference. And we leave it up to them, whether a lot of times they'll go, oh gosh, I didn't know that, and we'll delete the item in e-finance and amend the PO, and then they'll order the items from us. So we do more of that than looking at trends of what they do. So every once in a while I will see something odd that I do the report, and I'll call them and go, I'm just curious why why you're buying this many items or why you're not buying these and other elementary campuses are. But not a lot of that. It's pretty much we're there to serve them, but I don't do a lot of analytical on the back end. I do look at, like I said, POs that come across, and Jennifer Harrell and my assistants, they are really good at spotting warehouse items. Every once in a while, they're cheaper than us, and it's hard to, Amazon is a one that we sometimes get Amazon orders and go, they're beating our price. So we really look at that and go, are we buying it, at the correct place? So I hope I answered your question. So we
I was
don't.
just looking
yeah.
for whether there was a check and balance and, when people sometimes talk about how we go about spending and, this seems like a minimal thing, but we all know that paper goods can, add up. And then sometimes when you see something like light bulbs, it can indicate if there's a tremendous amount of them used, it could indicate maybe an electrical issue. And I just was trying to see about the checks and balances.
I would
about
say,
that.
Mrs. Barrett, most of it is the office supply products that are over there that Mr. Pantel and his group do the most business with. Our checks and balance really do lie with the campus, the amount of budget that they have to be able to purchase those things. So we would hope that they would be as efficient as possible. And most of the times, for those particular items, our warehouse inventory is the most economical way to be able to do that. So the real balance there is more on the business office monitoring of the budget end rather than what's being purchased from the warehouse, because it could be purchased any number of places within the community.
Well, and I think that's important for everyone to understand too, is that the principals are really probably monitoring that along with the business office. So
Right.
it doesn't really, but it is being checked,
Yes, ma'am.
It is being checked. This just kind of gives you a little idea of how our sales have gone up, and that's primarily due to the new facility. So surplus auction, we have anywhere between 2 and 4 auctions a year. Those are our proceeds. We use SWICO auctions for our services. We have begun. They have a program where you can do your own pictures and do your own lots, and we have done a couple auctions on our own, posted on their website, and we do pay them a small fee to obviously to process those. So we're up to 4 auctions in 17-18 and about to have our first one for 18-19. So those are put out there for the public. A registered bidder through SWICO can bid on those items. We do not donate items or sell items to individual employees or staff members. Those are all done through a bid surplus website. One thing that's not on here that I failed to put on there, before we put items up for auction, we look at all the items and decide, can these be repurposed? And we put out an email with a big spreadsheet to all the departments and campuses, and it's amazing how many people claim things and go, I can use this. Now, we get them back sometime quicker than we want, but I'm a big believer in trying to repurpose things. Now, if a chair has got a crack in it, we're not going to make that available. Most IT items are not reusable, but a lot of times we get things that are perfectly good shape, and we try to do a little better job of educating our staff that these items are out there. We leave that open a couple weeks, and we get a lot of traffic. In fact, we're fixing to post one, I think, this week. We'll get a lot of visitors out there to the warehouse, and they just, go around. With our new facility, it's a lot better because it's well lit and people can see. Over here, it was not the greatest setup over here, and it was hard for people to come over and see what we had. So that's Jennifer Harrell's done a great job of making that a lot more easier for people to see what we might have available. So records retention, that's just shows the number of records boxes that we've processed and destroyed. The number was down last year a little bit because of some new TSLAC, Texas State Library Archives Commission, I believe it is, retention records, and so we didn't process quite as many this or didn't destroy, let me say that, didn't destroy quite as many boxes last year. So we're a little behind. This year we'll probably do more because of that little drop. So I do have a 5-year staffing and equipment plan. I will say that it's not real structured. We ask for personnel when we need it. The vehicles we take a look at every year, and Robert and I, and with input from maintenance that takes care of the vehicles, we take a look at that and see, is this vehicle going to make it another year and be safe and not incur excessive repairs, and that's part of the budget process. I will request that. Just general equipment. Really, be honest with you, I have new equipment with the new warehouse, so I'm in great shape. My forklifts are brand new, so I'm not buying a whole lot of equipment right now. So that's kind of pushed out there quite a ways on my 5-year plan. And then technology is really driven by the technology department for the most part, as far as replacement of our technology. Yes, we adjust it. Yeah, we try to adjust it every year.
You're gonna see this, right?
No, yeah, 5 years from now, I won't be here then, so. So somebody will have to carry that on. System integrity is the next section.
A real, big description of the system. So any questions on the system description part? A lot of good information in there.
All right, so we'll move on to system integrity. So we are committed to fair and open bidding opportunities for vendors. We hold each other mutually accountable to high standard of ethics in our department. We talk about that almost daily. We are transparent in our process and open and honest in our communications. So I'm going to show you a little bit how we do that. We provide open opportunities for potential bidders through a number of different ways. We have a vendor registration form on our webpage. We advertise in the newspaper when required. We post bid opportunities on our webpage, pre-bid conferences and open door policy, anyone can attend. And we attend conferences and vendor exhibits. That's a good place to establish relationships with vendors. If we have time, they can click on the purchasing website. I'm gonna go ahead and skip over it for now. We can go back and visit it. We do provide training to administrative assistants annually in conjunction with the business office. And we also do training for principals on textbooks and other topics, records management, and all the different areas that I discussed. We do publish one copy of a policies and procedures handbook, and that handbook is posted on our website. It has a lot of good information. We update that each year, and that is the primary item that we use each August to go over with our new we have, some turnover with our administrative assistants, and we kind of use that as our template, and they have access to that. So we do training. It's important. We get training from our primary is the Texas Association of School Business Officials, TASBO, annual conference, yearly, throughout the year, daily one-day conferences. There's a purchasing academy that one of my employees is going to next month, in November. Region 6 hasn't done a lot lately, but we do occasionally go to the other region service centers and get training from them. And then we do have a local Brazos Valley Public Purchasing Association that puts on a seminar once a year, sometimes twice a year. So we get continuing education points from them. It's primarily the local folks, Sam Houston, so sometimes people like that show up. Good opportunity to keep current on the purchasing laws and procedures. So as far as TASBO, we have 3 employees certified as Certified Texas School Business Officials, myself, Julie Holliday, Jennifer Harrell, and I am also a certified purchasing manager from the Institute of Supply Management, which I obtained when I was at Texas A&M. So ethics, a big part of what we do. Again, ethics is a big part of TASBO certification. So when we go to the conference every year, that's always on the agenda, and it's never a bad thing to stay abreast of that. Ethics has become a big topic. We do have the success team ethics training that we're going through, And of course, they have the conflict of interest CIQ forms that the vendors are required to fill out when their bid package. And we have the board disclosure, officer disclosure forms that you guys fill out and that we fill out. So I feel like we do a pretty good job of staying, doing things ethically. With purchasing, there is a lot of gray area sometime, and so we have to be careful of that. So as far as supervision, all employees report to me. Let me back up. The warehouse supervisor and my office staff report to me, and then the 3 couriers, of course, report to the warehouse manager. We do conduct annual performance evaluations as required. We do, as far as accountability, we do a warehouse stock inventory in December and August. That involves getting out there and counting and making sure that we've got what our program says we have on hand. One of the things I would like to get was wanting to get was a type of barcode inventory program. Unfortunately, our accounting system just doesn't quite have that capability right now, the e-finance. So when they hopefully we'll get that, someone will develop an interface with that, then that will make that job a lot easier. And as we grow and add more items, it will be a better way to keep inventory than manually going around. That's something we really looked at when we opened the new warehouse, and we would have had to bought a standalone program that wouldn't have synced up with e-finance. So we decided to wait on that. As I mentioned earlier, each June, 2 weeks, myself and Jennifer and Robert and I physically go to about half our campuses, and with the help of the assistant principal, we count the textbooks and make sure that what's on their audit is actually there. If they come up short, then they pay us to replace them if it's appropriate, and that's usually money collected from the student who's lost a book. We generally don't make teachers pay for lost textbooks. Yeah. So
Or they can receive
it's an
proper
interesting time.
motivation and bring them back.
Right.
I've written a check for that.
That's right. Some of y'all may have done that.
Who here has not written a check for that?
Right.
We had two, $80 a piece. They were discovered and returned promptly.
We do issue
Get ready.
refunds sometime. Kids will lose books under their bed and then find them over the summer. So sometime they pay us and then we get into refunds, which we're not real fond of, but that's just part of it.
To happen.
Business office. So anyway, that's just part of it. So we do track our inventory in the TIP Web IM program. That program has been here since I have. We did go to a web-based system, I believe in 2008, but it's one of the 2 main textbook tracking programs used by school districts. So what that does, each campus can barcode every book, and they can use the barcode feature and check books out to teachers or to students. And I think if you ask the people that were here before we did this, and there are a few I think that are still here, they will tell you that the TIP Web IM program is much better than the old system, which was keeping up with it, with a piece of paper and a spreadsheet or whatever. So it's cut down on our losses for sure. So that was a good program and is working well for us. Like I said earlier, our records retention is updated each December. RCI comes out and spends a week with us, and basically they go over, look at all the boxes that have been collected. They label them and put the retention date on them, and they put them into a program that we get back about a month later, and that keeps us compliant with the records retention TSLAC, which oversees all that. And they also sit down with me and go over any issues they see with things that are in the boxes that shouldn't be in there, misfiled, things like that, just to improve the process. It's kind of an honor system with the secretaries, and we tell them to put them like items in a box and label them, but they're doing a lot of stuff. So the company adds benefit by going through there and sorting it and going, oh, this should be in a separate box. So that's why it takes about a week to get all that straight. So. and they'll make recommendations to us about, you guys are asking to keep these for 10 years, but you don't have to keep them but 5. And we'll check with, usually we check with Dr. Ely and make sure that's okay. We don't do a lot of that, but every once in a while we ask for a longer retention time than is required by law. So that's looked at every year. One of the things that I was able to purchase with the new warehouse was a barcode tracking system, kind of like FedEx uses in the UPS. And we wanted to get away from the logs, the paper logs that people signed, and we wanted to give our end users the ability to know, if they wanted to know, their package was signed for at the dock at this time, and they can also see when it was delivered to them. So I don't know how many people are taking advantage of it. A lot of them still call us and go, "Where's my package?" But it's certainly helped my people to be able to look, if they have the tracking number, they can look it up and see where it's at in the system. So I think that's been a very good upgrade that we're allowed to purchase and kind of get us a little more modern on that. As far as safety, we do keep MSDS sheets on all our stock items. We do forklift training annually. We're all get a little card and certify us to drive the forklifts. We do fire suppression training, which is done through facilities. Fill out accident reports when we have one. And we have the HCDE annual audit that the whole district safety audit. Is that annually still, Dr. Ely, or?
We're going to,
It's
every 3 years,
every 3 years. Okay, so
but we're going to annually now.
annually, okay. And then we do have required training in Edge of Hero that we just did on those topics that are required of all employees. So one of the things that I think I brought to the district when I came here was coordination with outside agencies. I came from A&M. We did a lot of cooperative things together, and I think I did a pretty good job of, one reason, know the people, but just utilizing these different agencies that we're surrounded by, and we do some collective bids. The fuel bid with Texas A&M is a big one that we all participate in and realize savings from that bid. And we're also work with the county and the city of Bryan, City College Station on other bids. And I didn't mention, I guess I erroneously left off BISD, but we do some cooperative bidding with Bryan ISD as well. So we have interlocal agreements. Some of those are on the board agenda y'all see. Texas A&M has graciously allowed us to utilize a lot of their contracts, their IT contracts. So it seems to me to make sense to utilize their buying power if it's available to us. So that's the end of that section. Any questions on any of that? So if not, we'll move on to performance metrics. So what measures do we use in purchasing to determine how well we're doing? The first step obviously is to develop the metrics, determine the performance targets. We get input from the board, which we did 3 years ago when we did this presentation. And we take a look and see, are these the correct measures? And do we need to add any new ones? And I believe there is a new one on here, and I believe I deleted one from 15. But so we do take that input every 3 years, and annually we are required to submit an update to Dr. Ely, and that is looked at to see how we're tracking on that particular metric. So the metrics fall into 5 categories: productivity, quality, timeliness, customer satisfaction, and safety. So the first metric for productivity is how many bids are we receiving when we issue a formal bid. And as you can see, our average response is 8. We do occasionally only get 2 responses, so that's why we're not 100% on 3 bids. The numbers are pretty similar. Generally average between 8 and 10 responses on a formal bid. And it is good. We can do better, but that's a pretty good sample to choose from. One of the new ones we added from the report in 2015 was cost savings. And what I did was I took that, looked at a bid and took the average bid. So we added them all together and took an average bid, compared that to the bid that was awarded. Not always the low bid, best value sometime. And then that difference is really what that number is for, 15,385 for those five, for that average bid. Total savings of 92,315. Really, that's just a reflection of doing competitive bidding, which is required by law. But it kind of gives you an idea of the savings that you can realize from issuing a formal bid. So those numbers we were down a little bit this year. We didn't have quite as many bids. And these are only line item bids. You can't really do cost savings when you do a catalog discount bid, which is some of what we do. So there's not a whole lot to choose from. We don't really do all that many line item, give me a grand total bid. We're working on one now, so that's why the sampling size is fairly small on that. As far as work orders, our number of work orders completed by warehouse staff, the type of work orders that we process normally there's really no real reason not to close them out when they're done. Unlike maybe construction type work orders, there might be an issue and something doesn't get finished. We usually get a work order to move some furniture from one place to the other and close it out. The reason you have less than 100% there is sometimes people go, I want you to move this at spring break, but I'm telling you now, so the work order is staying open until we get the spring break and actually do the work. So that's why they eventually all get closed, but when you cut them off with the years, you have less than 100%. So again, about 700 work orders is what we're running through there on a yearly basis. And that number has went down a little in 16, 17. I'm not sure why, but it's pretty constant if you look back even before that. Employee turnover, our goal is less than 25%. We've had a little turnover with retirement, and had an employee leave and had one leave and come back. So we're still under the stated goal of 25%, but our turnover with 8 employees is pretty minimal. So something I've been able that I'm proud of is retaining my staff, and they've stayed with me quite a while, most of them.
So we're pretty confident that we'll have 13% next year.
I think so. Well, it'll be that and then some, maybe. Yeah, you're right.
But we could.
Hadn't thought about that.
We could maybe get it to 0 though, right?
That's right. That's right. I hadn't thought about that. So. Okay, this is just a metric on quality as far as certifications. Although not required, I think purchasing certifications are very important and something that I've been supported on and really encourage my staff as far as the TASBO certifications, and to make sure that we're current on the rules and regulations. So we set it as 50%. We're exceeding that, and I think that's something that is I'm appreciative of the support and the funding for the conference we get to go to, and the occasional one-day seminar. We've had some changes with federal legislation with procurement, better known as EDGAR, and that has required a little more extra training to go to make sure we're doing that correctly. So processing formal bids, we like to 60 calendar days is a standard, and that's from the date you get the requisition or the specifications to when you guys approve the bid, which is, depending on the board meeting date, sometime it kicks us over. So sometime it's a little out of control. You can see that our average time is 67 days. Some of it is driven by a requirement to wait 10 days after you advertise. So we can get the specifications done and the bid already advertised. We have to wait by law 10 days after the second advertisement, and then go through the evaluation process, depending on how complex that is, and then have that recommendation from Mr. Martindale if it's over 50,000 for board approval. So that's kind of from start to finish on the processing time.
Is there a way to account for things that are outside of your control, or is that part of your metric and why you set it at 60 days? And an example would be something that actually has to have our board meeting. Well, sometimes you may fall, well, it doesn't even have to be the board meeting. It could be after the agenda's set. Well, you're not on it, so then you've got to wait a full, sometimes 5-6 weeks
Right.
just because of our schedule. And I guess that's what is there a good way to do that so that, in essence, your metric's not penalized?
Right.
And I don't know that there is.
I don't know there's a good way because we receive things in different stages of the process. So it's a tough one to pinpoint down a little bit because of the timing of the board meetings and those things.
Okay.
So maybe something needs to be looked at, possibly adjusted to account for. So in the worst case scenario, you get a requisition specifications the day after the board meeting, and then you start working on it. You go through the bid process and then take it to board, and that may be a better way to look at what is the reasonable target date. And 60 days is just something that I've always kind of strive to attain. 6 weeks, if you didn't have advertising, 6 weeks is a better goal. But anyway, yeah, it's a tough one, Mr. Harris. I think maybe something needs to be looked at. Maybe one of those that's hard to really attain because of the way the schedule changes.
Okay. I just mentioned I know sometimes we're impacted by that timing, so.
That is correct. So, as far as timeliness with warehouse staff response, this is primarily work orders. We have an average response there of 49 hours, but 87% are completed within 72 hours. So we're doing a tremendous volume of work orders. A lot of them we do the same day, but the reality is, what's a day and a half there, 49 hours. So that just gives you an idea. The extra courier that we received, you can see, has allowed us to lower that number to basically 30 hours. So you can see the improvement just by having one additional employee. So we do have a survey that we do, which will be a few slides going forward. Instructional allotment is another one that's tricky because we rely on TEA processing time, but we attempt to do it stating a goal of 30 calendar days. We get a request approved by the IMA Council, which Dr. Trammell is our leader on that. And once I get that, then I begin the process of entering the request and getting approval from TEA, entering a purchase order, receiving the items, and delivering. And our goal is 30. We're averaging 36 days. TEA this year had a lot of IMA requests. Some of them took several weeks to get approval. As you can see, 48% were completed in less than 30, but over half took more than that. And that some of that is just volume. We also just received a lot of IMA requests at one time, and so that impacted. We are purchasing more items through IMA from the curriculum department, probably a more individual purchase orders than maybe before. And that's money that was previously been spent on maybe adopted items. So it's still curriculum and still supporting the students, but it's just being done a little differently. So what that does is just increases our volume. So I basically have to enter an IMA request for every request that we get to keep them separate. So sometime that could take a few days. So just want to put that disclaimer there. As far as customer satisfaction, we are able to do a survey through Eduphoria. We set 90% as our standard. Doing those surveys, we are doing pretty good as far as customer satisfaction, and something I'm proud of. And again, with additional manpower, with a department my size, one employee makes a difference. So I'm pretty happy with those numbers. We can also do a survey as far as our warehouse services. So this is warehouse inventory specifically, and we've done surveys for several years. Maybe you can see by the responses, maybe they're maybe getting tired of our surveys. I don't know, but they're down a little bit this year. But we're meeting we send them to each campus and department, and that's what we got back this year. But they're very satisfied with our warehouse inventory. We do have a new warehouse stock item form on our website. So when we do the survey, there's a place on there where they can put, we'd like you to carry, something, and we do take that and really look at those. So a lot of times I get those requests when I do the survey each year. Okay, workers' comp claims, we like to have none, and we've only had one since 15-16, so I like to think we do a pretty good job considering the number of hours that we're out on the road, the equipment that we have in our warehouse. We do a good job, I think, of staying healthy and staying safe, and I think those numbers reflect that. Vehicle accidents, again, you can see from the previous slides, we're spending a lot of time on the road, and that's the number of accidents we've had. And I believe the one we had was not even with it was bumping into one of our own pieces of equipment at a warehouse. So it wasn't out on the roads, what I'm trying to say. So again, I think that's a reflection of my couriers and the guys in operating, equipment that, warehouse equipment, forklifts, that they're, can be dangerous if you're not trained properly. So we're at the point where we're looking at future performance measures 2018 and beyond. So I guess this is where we take a look at, from the input that y'all have gotten, any things new items that you think need to be incorporated into this report. I guess it'll be done in 3 years, and seek input in that area.
Basically, we've got a lot of measures here, probably more than any others. Are these the right measures? When we're thinking about customer service and timeliness and productivity, are we measuring the right things? Were there other things that you think we need to consider measuring?
Well, I will point out that there's some things I really like about this. One, the safety measures, the workers' comp, and then the vehicle accident claims. So I'm glad that's there, and that definitely is one. But the other one that I like, and I want to make sure we capture it, would be, and I think you probably do, it has to do with that customer satisfaction. I think that's where, if we had problems, that's where it would show up, as long as they have an opportunity to raise the issue. That to me is one of the driving things. Do our auditors look at any of this when we have our financial audit? So this is all internal for
Yes,
us.
our financial auditors are looking at how we spend our money. Are we spending them for allowable expenses, and making sure that we're accounting for that correctly, but they don't really go into necessarily the processes that Mr. Pantel or his department uses.
So they won't get this far
No, sir.
down. Okay. And do we have internal auditors that do this?
So what we do is we make sure, and part of that is that public process when we take it to the board, that we are purchasing things in legally acceptable ways through purchasing cooperatives, through requests for competitive bids or seal proposals, or those types of things. And quite frankly, that's why we have a professional in the position of Mr. Pantel to make sure that we are abiding by all the purchasing statutes, the federal statutes associated with Edgar, and that we continue to pour resources into their training and making sure that we are up to date and following every stricture of the laws.
Okay, good. That's what I'm asking.
Okay, I noticed on your purchasing office staff, members with certifications specific to their duties, that half person, is that your part-time reception that's
receptionist.
included? Is that necessary for that? Would that be included in your metrics as being someone who it was necessary to have that certification? Or could you remove that and put that? The 86% is awesome, okay? I don't want to take away from that. But, you know, if it's not necessary for your receptionist to have that certification, then would you include her into that metric?
It might be something that needs to be removed, because now the receptionist does handle some of the processing for things that we get in, like forms that need to be filled out. So but the honest truth is, we don't provide a whole lot of formal training for the receptionist. Her primary job is to be there and greet visitors. And so while the part-time receptionist needs to know about all these rules to some extent, we don't really hold them, we don't require it. And so we don't give them the training on that.
Well, then I don't think it should be measured.
So it probably should not be part of it. What they're mainly doing, what she's doing for me is we get POs over that need forms filled out, and she knows that this is a federal purchase order. And so she gets a hold of the vendor and says, we need these forms filled out. So we definitely keep her in the loop when new things are coming up, but she doesn't attend the training through TASBO. So, and that if we go to a full-time receptionist at some point, which we probably will need down the road possibly, then maybe we consider that, but.
Well, let's just not mess up the metrics if it's not measuring
Right,
what it's supposed to
right.
measure.
I think Mr. Harris made a good point of maybe looking at that time frame. I hadn't thought about it, but maybe starting the clock on the day after a board meeting and then taking it through that. And I'm thinking the 60 days may have been not calculated that way when I originally did it 3 years ago, I think, so.
Well, I was going to say, you know, your metrics are high standard. And you know, with you leaving, I think that's a great, somebody's going to have to follow big in your footsteps. But it also has to be where they feel like they're not working against the clock, that they're
Right.
working, you know, that we're all working together in
Right.
that way. So you'll figure that out.
Well, I hope I've set, you know, a groundwork for continuing on and the framework and the culture is a lot of it is just, you know, getting buy-in from your customers. And so I like to think I've been here long enough to hopefully it's been pretty pretty standard and uniform. We do strive to be, you know, uniform in our response, but still have flexibility because no two situations are the same.
I was going to say, there's probably a lot of retail
Consistent.
people that would love some of the metrics that you're using as well as the performance.
Right.
So it's a great job.
Yeah, I was thinking that especially the vehicles and running forklifts. I know Home Depot and Lowe's would love to have those numbers.
I think as we move on with more technology with our accounting system and other things, we'll be able to do more. But I'm a little bit limited on what I can report because of some of the limitations. But I think as the years go by, you'll be able to run more reports that affect purchasing. And so it was a challenge putting this together originally to come up with useful numbers that meant something to you guys. And it was real reflective to look back, because when you're doing it, you don't think about it. But when you look back and look at 700 work orders, it does makes me as the director go, wow, that's a lot. And so it was a good thing. And again, revisiting every year to update it is a good way to just take a look at how we're doing. So
Refresh my memory on Edgar, and is he related to Felix? No, I'm joking. No, on Edgar.
refresh your memory on
No,
what Edgar is, or
Yeah.
it's the new it's the federal legislation regarding federal funds that was issued in December of 2015, and it tightened down some of the requirements for purchases with federal funds. Things like the threshold was $3,500. Over that amount, you had to get adequate number of quotes. So that was a little not aligned with the state law, which I believe was at that time was 10. But we tried to line them up, and so we don't have to think about federal funds, this rule. So we consciously matched them up, took the most restrictive, and that's what we use now. So just recently, they changed the 3,500 to 10,000. And they also, one of the big components of Edgar is that over $150,000 aggregate purchase requires you to do a cost estimate and an independent determination of, basically, you got to go back and look at your prior purchases of those items and compare them to what you paid for them in the past, pull data from other districts, and you got to do all that on the front end. And then once you open the bids, you have to see if those prices were reasonable. So they raised that limit from 150 to 250, which we were all very ecstatic about in purchasing, because we don't really do very many purchases with an aggregate federal spend of $250,000. So I've done one, and it's quite a chore, but I did one when the limit was 150 on professional development training I set up for Dr. Trammell. And it was an interesting process. It was quite a bit of work. That's the big thing. And the other thing is getting all the people that use federal funds, getting them into the process of, it's tightened down a little bit more. Sole sources are not as easy to justify with federal funds now. So there's actually a form that you can send, ironically, to TEA, who's the pass-through agency, and they will tell you whether it's approved or not. We haven't done any of those. I haven't sent any to Austin. We've either worked it out or decided it wasn't a sole source. So a lot of work put into establishing procedures for federal funds has been going on. Deborah Parks, with the grant manual, and then we did a big training last summer with Mickey Morris, our legal counsel, that I wanted somebody to come in and make sure people understood this is legal. This is serious stuff that you can lose funding if you don't follow the right rules. So I think our group's done a great job. They actually gave us a 2-year grace period. We chose to take the grace period, but in the meantime, we're still trying to do it the right way. 'Cause I didn't want them to have sticker shock on September 1 of 2018, which is when the law went into full compliance. So some people ask me, why are we doing this when we don't have to? I said, I think we need to learn how to do it. And that gave me some flexibility at times but I think we made a lot of progress in that area, and it's been a big topic for purchasing directors, because before, the federal legislation was not as restrictive, and it was more about the local funds and TEAs. So what we tried to do is mirror up the Texas Education Code 44 with the Edgar. And I'm glad you're not asking me what Edgar stands for, but I can get that to you, but it's Education Grant or something, Education Department Grant. Anyway, I should have wrote it down, but we try to mirror those up so that our people aren't confused that, the same thresholds apply for local funds. So I'd be glad to share the actual legislation with you, but if you look on our
No, we're good.
yeah, the grants manual that's on the Department of Business website has all the ins and outs of it. So
So in a nutshell, they raised the amount
They raised the amount and made it more
Rigorous.
restrictive. Exactly. And yes, we had to change. One thing that we did, we had to update all our bids to be EDGAR compliant, and they started that in 16. And one of the differences between local bids and federal bids, you have to weight the criteria, valuation criteria, and you got to weight them a certain way. So we had to go through and look and see what was coming up for bid, and we had to redo those. It also required a whole packet of forms that the vendor had to sign off on. And some vendors refused to do it. I'm not going to name names, but there's some major companies that have refused to sign the federal, basically refused to do business with entities that receive federal grant funds. So you wouldn't recognize the names if I said them. But for the most part, vendors realize they have to comply. So we had to redo all those. That was quite a chore. And when we did that, we extended the annual bids to 2-year terms with 3 renewals instead of a 1-year term and 4-year terms. So I knew I wanted to get these set up in place before I left so that we would have time before all these next bids come up that need to be redone. Right now, we have 2 bids that are not EDGAR compliant, and we were given advice that we could keep the current bids and let them run their course, but we're actually evaluating one now, and we will be doing another one in December that needs EDGAR compliance. So when I leave here into December, all our bids will be compliant at least through next August of 2019. So, and basically they just need to be rebid. All the terms and conditions are there. So glad you brought that up because that's been a.
You can now ask in all the board
Big-
meetings if this is EDGAR compliant.
I think you should write a report on it. You should look it up and write a report on it.
It only again only applies to federal funds, and we are very appreciative that they raised the limit. $3,500 is not much these days, and it was causing a lot of grief with us and working with the departments, and so I think that's a good reasonable number to work with. So if it's over 10,000, then we get involved and help the departments get quotes. If it's over 50,000, we do a formal bid or use a purchasing co-op, and you see those. So we want to move on to the challenges. So part of, I think I mentioned this earlier, but each year we take a look at these metrics. We update them for Dr. Ely. We look at, when we're doing that, of course, that's part of the budget request that I put in and staffing requests, and hopefully the cabinet will consider the merits of requests based on these metrics. We're in pretty good shape right now. I feel good. There's a couple things I want to mention to you guys. And we do, again, a full management workshop every 3 to 4 years. Last one done in 2015. So challenges and policy recommendations. So one of the big items that I think the district needs to consider, pretty much a lot of the entities are going to electronic bid platforms, and the City College Station, City Bryan, Brazos County have hooked up with a company and invited us to participate in what will be called the Brazos Valley Online Bidding System. And I thought it went into effect September 1, but I found out yesterday that actually is going to go live December 1. But I think that's something that we need to look at. It will lessen the manpower required to tabulate bids. Right now, we're doing them in Word, we're converting them to PDFs, we're emailing them out, but they come back manually. So somebody's having to drop it by or send it in FedEx. With this program, the software, everything's electronic. You create the bid, you send it out, it comes back, and the beauty of this Brazos Valley bidding system is that we all get to share the vendors, the bid list. The big headache to all electronic procurement systems is keeping the bid list updated. People leave and their emails change. Well, you got 4 or 5 entities doing it, you got a lot better chance of it staying updated. So that was one of the things that was really appealing to me to do that. And we will receive a lot more bids with this type of system, which can be good and bad. If you're doing it manually like we are now, tabulating 30 bids can be overwhelming. But with an electronic tabulation, it's done. It's done for you. And boy, I mean, you can pay for the thing with a couple bids that, now we will probably branch out and get into areas getting bids out of state that we might not have received, and that will make the evaluation a little more challenging, but it's going to give us more options. So that's something that I think needs to be looked at. It is a multi-year commitment, but those agencies, Bryan ISD is actually on this system, but decided to join it earlier than they were ready, so they're doing it independently right now. The BISD is using the program. Any questions about how that system works? Or it's a software program where we basically, if you register as a bidder for a certain commodity, you will get an email with all the bid documents. They'll fill them out, electronically and respond back. And then the system tabulates those bids, puts them in low bid order or however you want, makes notes of the deviations within this bid spec, which is nice because right now we're searching for deviations when we look at a proposal, and that's a big piece. And it has a contract management piece to it as well, that you can keep up with your contracts, and it'll give you a tick, timer that says this contract's expiring in 90 days. And so there is another component to it as well. It's kind of the way that districts and big entities are going, is some type of electronic method. I think at some point we will start seeing a decline in bid responses because we're still doing it the old way. But we're not there yet. But that's one of my recommendations. For staffing, I think one of the big
Before you move off of that, let me.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What does A&M do? Do they use something like that, or?
A&M has a program called Aggie Buy, I believe, and Dr. Weston may know about it. I know they've had one, and they changed to another one, and I think they've gone back to what's called Aggie Buy, which is essentially an automated procurement system that does the bids electronically.
Okay.
They are not using this program here. This program is geared more toward municipalities and school districts. A&M, they want a little more flexibility with some of their terms and conditions, but they are not receiving bids, I do not believe, anymore through UPS. So that way, they're done through the Aggie Buy program, which is a catchy name for their software program, which was not there when I left there. So I'm not sure the name of the program, but they call it Aggie Buy. So we actually utilize some of those contracts. So
Okay.
but they are doing, they're doing electronic bidding.
Okay.
Move on to staffing. One of the challenges for I think all directors here in CSISD is retaining qualified employees. I think I've done a pretty good job of that, but it's still a challenge, and we need to be, I think, aware of what those guys are doing and keep up. We did the salary study, and that was good to see how we compare. But I think that needs to still be kept out there as far as retainage, keeping employees and making sure their salary and benefits are in line with similar positions. The other thing is, as we grow and process more purchasing things, I think the district could be well served by having another management level position in the district. That could be a buyer, that could be an assistant director. As it stands now, when I'm out, I'm out and I'm managing it from home or delegating it to someone. But I think, we're getting to the point with 8 employees and the size of the district that we should look at somebody that could function and do bids and have the authority to sign purchase orders and all those things that I'm responsible for. So something to look at. Maybe a buyer position, an upgrade. The purchasing specialist, for y'all's benefit, is kind of a hybrid administrative assistant with specific knowledge in procurement. So they get they get to go to all the training, all the conferences, but when it comes down to it, I'm the one signing off on the final product. So the next logical step up from a purchasing specialist is a buyer, or you can call it, any number of names, and that person would have the authority to issue bids, make bid decisions, sign purchase orders, and do some of the administrative things that is really just for me right now. So something to look forward, going forward, I think needs to be put out there. Any questions on that?
Not right now, no.
So as far as recommendations of policy, if and when the district decides to go to electronic bids, that will require amendment to the board policy. We do mention it in CH local, but I don't think we really have, it needs to be refined to where that's a permitted way to receive bids. So right now, people ask me, how come I don't receive bids by email? Part of the problem with that is the policy doesn't support it. And the other thing is it's got problems if you just ask for email bids back. Somebody's email doesn't work and they go, well, I sent it, but it didn't go through. The software program cures all those problems by having an audit trail that says, yeah, you submitted it and we got it. So right now we email out bids and we follow up with vendors to make sure they received them. But as far as them coming back, they have to be submitted, paper form.
Does
That would require.
TASB have sample language for that kind of policy change?
Absolutely, absolutely. I have it. I mean, it's yes. So that wouldn't be hard. It's not extensive revision.
Okay.
So that's something to think about. They will be going live in December, and we'll see how the program works. I think it's going to be a good one for the area agencies. So basically, one vendor can register to do business with all of us. And the commodity codes, right now, we've got real generic commodities that when they go in and say, I want to bid on binders, it's office supplies. The system, and I haven't seen because I'm not part of the process, but I understand they're going to develop real specific commodity codes. So a vendor can say, well, I want to bid on binders, but I don't want to bid on all office supplies. And it can be real specific. And the person preparing the bid can go in there, I want to select these commodities and these vendors. So that's going to help us also with tracking of aggregate spending. And you talked about auditors like to track aggregate spending. That's going to help us with that component rather than just looking at raw numbers in a finance system that just say we spent X amount of dollars with Lowe's, but we don't know what they were. You'd have to look at it. This thing will tell you we bought lumber and we bought this, and so that's another plus that the system does provide.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
So I appreciate the support. I left A&M 18 years ago and made a big jump to come over here. I went through the school system, and it was really neat to be able to come back and give back to my district. It's something I never thought would ever happen. I never even dreamed of it. But I saw the ad in the paper and went, why not, So I left, A&M, big school and all that, and I really enjoyed my time here and, worked with some great people. I'm going to miss that. And the support from the board has been tremendous. So I want to thank my staff for putting all these numbers together. I did not do this on my own, I promise you. It's a lot of work, getting them right and getting them in the right format and, going through all the numbers that aren't good. So I want to publicly thank them for helping me with these two reports that I've done.
Great. Well, I want to publicly thank you and them for it because it's a lot of good information and it helps us do our job as elected officials to monitor these systems and make sure that they're in place and that the integrity is strong. And then as you end up with ways to improve it, how can we make it better? How can we more efficiently use taxpayer money to help educate students? So thank you.
Thank you too for the whoever the voters for supporting the new facility. It's really made our job much more efficient. We were running around, spending a lot of time going from one place to another, and having it all under one building is it's amazing what it's done to just the productivity of everything. So that is very much appreciative, and I think the district is in a good place with warehousing and purchasing as far as facilities specifically.
That's good to hear,
Yeah.
as a school board member, but also as a voter and taxpayer. All right.
Any other questions?
Questions, comments? Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess with that,
I
we're
didn't talk
adjourned.
long enough, I guess, but.
No, you talked just right.
right.
It's perfect. All right, we're adjourned then.